Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to this second part of our next webinar. Harriet again, and our next presenter is Arsalan, class items. Arsalan will be telling us about SmartResponse and how it can improve aid, impact, and oversight. Arsalan is going to be presenting with Ben. So Arsalan and Ben, you're most welcome. Please, you can get started.
Thank you, Harriet. Hello, everyone. Thanks to all of you for sparing your precious time for this webinar. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Arsalan Kashfi. I'm an Atlas Core Fellow from Pakistan, class 18, and serving at Disaster Accountability Project called DAP. For today's webinar, founder and executive director of DAP, Ben Smilovitz, is also accompanying me as a co-presenter. Thank you, Ben, for joining us. Would you like to brief yourself briefly?
Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Smilowitz. I have the pleasure of working with Arsalan this year at Disaster Accountability Project. I started the organization after Hurricane Katrina, after managing Red Cross sites along the Mississippi Gulf Coast and witnessing how bad it was and that there was no independent oversight of the system. So that's when I founded Disaster Accountability Project. And I actually have known Scott for over a decade. In 2005, I was in his apartment in India while he was talking about the idea of Atlas Core. So it's been amazing to watch the organization grow from the idea to where it is now with so many alumni and active fellows.
Thank you, Ben. Dear all, Ben would join us at the last part of our presentation. So let's start. Let me start my presentation. Today's presentation is comprised of basically two parts. In first half, I will give you the introduction of DAP along its history of activities. And second half is to share details of one of DAP's initiatives called SmartResponse, which is to be launched in early 2016 for all of the disaster vulnerable US states and countries. Feel free to share your queries and comments. I and Ben will try to respond each of you at the end of this webinar. Later, you may reach out to us at our emails as well. So let's start with the introduction of DAP first. So Disaster Accountability Project has been the lone independent watchdog of disaster relief and humanitarian aid since 2007. It was founded after witnessing firsthand the failed response to Hurricane Katrina, where despite the vast resources, basic human needs exceeded the services made available to survivors, resulting in significant unnecessary loss of life and suffering. With no cohesive group to demand public accountability and provide an open line for survivors, emergency workers, and volunteers to report gaps during disasters. Therefore, DAP was created to save lives and reduce suffering after disasters by maximizing the impact of preparedness, response, and relief through citizen oversight and engagement, policy research, advocacy, and public education. DAP is the leading nonprofit organization that provides long-term independent oversight of disaster management systems. It engages a dedicated community to advance policy research and advocacy, promote transparency, and encourage the public to participate in oversight, community-based organizing, and discussions about disaster preparedness and relief. Prior to the creation of DAP in 2007, let me share with you that there was no organization providing independent oversight of the agencies and organizations responsible for these critical life-saving responsibilities. And our work has resulted in the release of millions of dollars of donations to survivors, instead of it being stuck in bureaucratic red tape. Okay. Now I'll share you a brief history of activities of DAP in past 7 or 8 years. In 2008, we launched a successful campaign to compel federal emergency during Hurricane Ike. and assisting numerous scholars and countless others by directing details of gaps in critical services to responsible government agencies and non-profit organizations. In 2009, we investigated and authored a report on the accessibility and modernity of emergency plans in 22 hurricane vulnerable Louisiana parishes. This report prompted many parishes to update and improve public access to their emergency plans. In 2010, DAP shared the report after 2010 Haiti earthquake, improved the transparency of our $1.2 billion US, and offered a first comprehensive look at how organizations were opening in Haiti at 6 months and 1 year after the earthquake. And afterwards, in 2012, DAP's report released in Haiti on the first anniversary of the Haiti earthquake, and that report generated a global media coverage. Afterwards, we returned to Haiti to conduct visits of disaster relief sites in coordination with Haiti-based aid watchdog. In 2012, we collected data from organizations immediately following the Superstorm Sandy response in an effort to hold organizations accountable for the donations they raised. Afterwards, our successful complaint to the New York Attorney General compelled the American Red Cross to release $4 million US to families that lost homes after Superstorm Sandy and were impacted by gross mismanagement at the American Red Cross. In addition to the complaint, DAP engaged a bipartisan group of members of Congress, attracted media attention in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Al Jazeera America, CNN, and so many others, and directly engaged nearly $100 million US in American Red Cross donors. In 2014, DAP completed 2 investigations on the state level standards of care for public health emergencies in Florida and Louisiana, resulting in a commitment by Louisiana public health officials to make specific improvements to state public health emergency planning. Afterward, we continued advocacy to improve accountability of major disaster relief organizations following Superstorm Sandy and expanded its oversight of organizations operating after other disasters, including the Joplin, Missouri tornado, West Texas explosion, and Colorado floods. Then, DAP partnered with the Center for High Impact Philanthropy to conduct an independent review to identify possible philanthropic and impact investment solutions to improve the New Jersey Superstorm Sandy recovery for the John Bon Jovi Soul Foundation. And currently in 2015, we released 5 reports detailing a lack of emergency and evacuation planning within 50 miles of 5 US nuclear power plants in New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Florida, and Illinois, and including jurisdictions in Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Maryland, North Carolina, and Indiana. Our work was also cited numerous times in a Government Accountability Office report on American Red Cross transparency and oversight, resulting in the introduction of the American Red Cross Sunshine Act, that is the federal legislation to improve oversight of the organization. Then, most recently, we released a major report 1 month after the Nepal earthquake, assessing consistency and transparency of organizations' online solicitations, and surveyed nearly 100 organizations to assess the extent of their current activities and plans for future involvement in Nepal. So that was the introduction and the history of activities of my host organization called Disaster Accountability Project. Now I'll share the background of one of its initiatives called SmartResponse.org. As you all know that the world has witnessed numerous disasters over the last 15 years, from earthquakes and tsunamis to massive tropical storms. The last 15 years has seen some of the deadliest natural disasters on record. But time after time in the months and years that follow major disasters, we hear familiar stories about how relief didn't reach those who needed it most. The same questions are asked: where did the money go? Who couldn't we help? Why couldn't we help survivors sooner? When will survivors feel the generosity of the outpouring of charitable support that followed the disaster? Globally, civil society organizations are often overlooked in the days and weeks following disasters. Private donors have become a major source of funding after natural disasters, having contributed over $5.8 billion to humanitarian crises in 2014 alone. Private donors are particularly likely to give after natural disasters and rapid onset crises. Unfortunately, most of the time, groups operating far from the disaster zone raise the most money, bypassing the NGOs and non-profits local to the disaster. As a result, local groups don't receive the direct investment they need to grow and succeed. Big international organizations with the brand names direct the relief. This structure makes relief and recovery slower and less effective. It also hinders preparedness. So, considering this background and all of these problems, SmartResponse.org offers the solution by collecting and sharing relevant data. And it's our claim that SmartResponse proposes to shift this dynamic and allow donors to identify and support the CSOs and NGOs with the greatest capacity to deliver and empower other stakeholders to fulfill their roles. So what we will do under this, basically under SmartResponse program, we will collect and share data on CSOs and international NGOs through SmartResponse.org. This public data will be used by donors to make more informed decisions, local CSOs to identify funding, beneficiaries to access available services, and other actors such as media, government, and international NGOs. The availability of this data before the next major disaster will maximize the impact of donor funds. Stakeholders will have access to real-time data on groups' capacities, activities, services, and their history. So this data will also encourage and facilitate more effective oversight of NGOs involved in disaster and humanitarian activities by government and other citizen oversight entities, and will build the capacity of local CSOs to participate in surveys and develop on-ground monitoring mechanisms to improve data quality. And let me share with you that SmartResponse is unique as this type of real-time pre-post disaster data has never been collected before. If we talk about the objectives of this program, the prime objective of SmartResponse.org is to build an easy-to-use and public web-based platform that will improve effectiveness, transparency, and accountability in disaster relief and humanitarian aid by 4 means. Number 1, by collecting and sharing data, including pre-disaster data about capacity of disaster relief and human services organizations by geographic area before disasters happen. Number 2, making this data available through SmartResponse.org, which will synthesize pre- and post-disaster relief data in a comprehensive and user-friendly manner for all stakeholders to access and use. Number 3, by incentivizing transparency, so organizations have greater access to how to help lists by sharing more data about their capacity by location. And number 4, by helping donors make more informed decisions about how to help after a disaster by revealing which local CSOs and international NGOs have capacity in each location and which do not. If we talk about the main users and target audiences of SmartResponse.org, that will be the survivors on the top of the list to more effectively access available short and long-term relief and recovery series, then the donors to support emergency response and long-term relief and avoid organizations that do not have a strong on-the-ground presence. Then comes the media to improve reporting and oversight after disasters, the disaster relief and aid organizations to better coordinate with other groups, learn about and gain access to available resources and improve effectiveness. The civil society and local NGOs to better compete with outside organizations for critical resources after disaster occur. And at the end, governments and coordinating agencies to improve their oversight and coordination roles. So now I would like to invite Ben to share the concept of SmartResponse support teams under this initiative. He will also share the core values to implement this program along some screenshots of smartresponse.org at the end of our presentation. So hand over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Arsalan. The SmartResponse support team model is a way to engage individuals that are members of diaspora networks from disaster vulnerable countries, but also individuals from these disaster vulnerable countries and states themselves. So, and who better to engage in the collection of data from a particular country like Pakistan or Bangladesh than people from those countries impacted by, you could call it the industrial aid complex or the aid industry. So we're recruiting in people, and everyone listening to this this webinar should consider applying to join these SmartResponse support teams to help us identify the organizations that we should be surveying for this effort. Not only to identify the organizations, but help us identify the contact information at these organizations, help us survey these organizations, train organizations to respond to these surveys, help them through it if they need it, and then also monitor the data that's coming in to see if it seems accurate or if any items stand out in particular. And then after a disaster, help make sure that the community that's most interested in supporting disaster relief efforts knows which organizations to support. So I think Arsalan discussed some of these core values with you already, but Disaster Accountability Project is fully independent of the aid community. SmartResponse is not a pay-to-play system in that organizations don't pay for their placement in the site. All the data and the placement of organizations is really based on the information provided and the qualifications of the organizations and their own capacity to deliver by location. We haven't developed an endorsement or grading system. We may decide that we need to go the route of a grading system at some point based on the data. It would be an automatic calculation. The reason for that is because if you look at the credit industry, we know, here in the US at least, we know the companies that assign grades. We actually don't know the companies before them that did not assign grades. And so based on that lesson, that the brands that often do the best are the ones that assign grades, we may need to go down that route. And the data is going to speak for itself. So organizations initially will be invited. So everyone from the American Red Cross to Oxfam World Vision to local CSOs will all be invited to sign up and share their data and let them compete with each other. So if an organization is on the ground in Nepal, let's say, Sathi is a good example, pre-existed before the earthquake, the partner of many organizations in Nepal, let them share their data and let an organization, let's say like American Red Cross, share their data about their pre-earthquake capacity in Nepal. And I think based on just that information, one would notice pretty quickly that one organization has extensive capacity and one doesn't have much capacity at all. And so hopefully donations can fall accordingly. Provide the data itself will provide details on the capacity, history, activities of each location. And then also we're going to ask organizations to submit quarterly updates prior to disasters. So every quarter organizations will share data, and then after disasters we'll speed up the requests for updates so that they might even be asked every 2 weeks or month to tell us updates on their involvement. Now, what we've learned is that some organizations, and many listening to this webinar likely know, will raise a lot of money really quickly and then decide ultimately what their involvement is going to look like. And some organizations raise a ton of cash and then exit really quickly. And oftentimes that money never actually makes it to where donors intended. So So asking questions every week or 2 weeks or month about whether or not they're actually still involved, I think is very useful. This is what the website will look like. And essentially any user can come, search by country or by disaster, and identify organizations that are there, and also identify organizations that are not there. This is really a carrot and stick approach. So if an organization, and you probably think of some yourself, are raising money after a disaster and they don't have anyone there, or they're sending 5 volunteers across the world, then, and they're raising money, then we want to get on day 0 or day 1 a way to stop them from raising that much money. Because really, why do they deserve to raise that much money if they don't have capacity to respond? We don't want these disasters to become profit opportunities for these huge international NGOs. Some of them do deserve it and others don't. So we want to, on day 1, be able to get on CNN and say this organization shouldn't be raising money, here's why. At the same time, we want to get on CNN a list of the organizations based on data that have the most capacity and that are donation ready and that can receive support directly. So think about it. Do you want cash donations to take a direct flight to Nepal? Or do you want them to take a year or 2 layover at an organization, if you're choosing, in Washington, D.C. or Los Angeles or Oklahoma? And I think the answer is that we want money to go directly to organizations, especially if they've been vetted and that they have the greatest capacity to deliver. So here's what some of this data will look like. This is a post-disaster page. So post-Superstorm Sandy, organizations that are responding, staff size, and a user can search by these different factors, and ultimately the services provided will model closely to the sectors: WASH, livelihoods,
food item
distribution, etc.
Infrastructure development.
And our ultimate goal is to make sure that emergency management, preparedness, response, recovery works, that when resources are generated after the disaster, they are an opportunity for those that have been impacted, and that donor intent is respected, that survivors and civil society organizations local to the disaster are empowered, and that we don't keep feeding the same dependencies on the international NGOs that often empower international NGOs and disempower local civil society, ultimately resulting in less mitigation, less preparedness, and less recovery that's locally run.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Harriet, do we have any questions?
We do not have any questions at the moment. There is something you still want to discuss further or to wrap up?
We'd love to take questions if there are any.
Still, there are no questions.
No questions?
Yeah.
So everyone loves this and has nothing to ask?
Okay, there is a question here. What are the identified risks of implementing SmartResponse organization in countries like Pakistan and Nepal? And what mechanisms have you put in place to mitigate those risks to guarantee success?
I'm going to Arsalan understands Pakistan much better than I, just in that he's worked in the development sector, and he's focused on opening an office for SmartResponse in Pakistan when he finishes his fellowship. So I'll let him answer the question.
So Harriet, if we talk about Pakistan, instead of risk, I see actually the opportunity there. Because, considering the law and order and security situation in Pakistan, there is always a gap between the government authorities and the NGO sector and the private sector, because there is a trust deficit among them, right? Government always thinks that these NGOs or the civil society organizations are here to challenge us, or so SmartResponse.org will actually empower the government to ensure its oversight role. So the opportunity which I see in case of Pakistan, that once this website is launched, what we are planning to approach the Pakistani government to offer this tool, which they also can use to monitor and oversight the NGOs and civil society organizations working in the country on different programs and different aspects, so that they can have the knowledge on all of the organization or NGOs or INGOs working in the country, what they are doing, what their specific program areas, from where they are getting funding and all that stuff. So instead of risks, if I talk about the Pakistan, I actually see the opportunity for this Smart Response program.
Okay, thank you, Arsalan, for responding to that.
So
next question is, how do you validate the data on this platform if information is self-reported? And then will it be triangulated? If so, how can you convince donors and government agencies to take this as a trusted source of information?
Yeah, this is a great question. I mean, right now, after disasters, there's basically an intern at CNN looking on the internet to find which organizations are soliciting donations, and that informs the How to Help page. And so you have hundreds of millions of dollars flowing to organizations just based on their brand recognition and their ability to put up a website. Oftentimes these websites mention previous disasters because they put them up so quickly because they know that money is flowing. So we're building SmartResponse support teams that are that comprise of diaspora members and in-country and in-state members to help monitor the data that's coming in. Also, I think that some of the most frequent users or visitors of this site will be organizations competing with each other, because ultimately we're hoping that this will help move money. I mean, we want people to make decisions based on data for the first time about which organizations are there and which are not there. We've actually collected data for reports after the Haiti earthquake twice, after Sandy in New York and New Jersey, and even Maryland, and after the Nepal earthquake most recently. And the data that we collected was actually pretty good. There were a few instances where it seemed like organizations overstated their numbers. And in those cases, they got found out. I mean, if an organization's not telling the truth, it'll be pretty easy, I think, for SmartResponse support teams and for local media and for the governments to identify errors and hold groups more accountable. So the idea is that more transparency and more information is a good thing, and that can only lead to more efficiency in responses. Currently, there's absolutely no transparency, and I would say that that's one of the reasons why we have such a poor record for global humanitarian aid.
Okay, Harriet, we have another question. Do we have time to respond to that question? I think it's Harriet. You there?
Hello?
Yeah, Harriet, we have another last question. Can we respond that?
Yeah, let's take that one question in 1 minute.
Okay, so we have a question that, do you have any experience working with the Ministry of the Russian Federation for Civil Defense Emergencies and Elimination of Consequences of Natural Disasters from the Russian Federation, or any non-profit emergencies organizations from Russia?
No, but if someone wants to, join a SmartResponse support team for Russia, I'd be happy to work with them. Are we getting at that kind of question, or?
Okay, there is another. It is a must that project managers encourage discussions of risks, as there is a possibility that an unwanted circumstance will occur that can result in some loss. My 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually heard that after a report in Haiti that some aid workers felt unsafe going to some refugee camp, some tent camps in Haiti, and my response was, well, maybe the organization is afraid of people actually learning the limitations of its activities, considering how much it raised. And so information can be used in a lot of ways, but ultimately, if information is used to hold organizations more accountable, then the results should be positive. If there's a situation where information about relief activities is going to compromise safety in a conflict zone, then I think we can suspend our activity there until overall data collection is more safe.
So we are
All right. I think that was the last question.
yeah.
Yeah, I want to just thank Arsalan for a really impressive presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
He did
all.
a great job.
Thank you all the fellows and all the viewers for sparing your time.
Yeah, thank you, Ben, too, for taking time off your desk to join us for this webinar. And Arsalan, thank you so much for getting the presentation together. It's been great.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a nice day. Bye.